Okay, two-part question for you, Dave. What was your favorite game at recess, and could it be rebooted as a death match? Go.
Um, I think it was definitely touch football, and obviously yes.
Yeah, I feel like that movie's been made, right? Have they made a death-based football game movie? Maybe not.
Well, I think just regular football is a death
Well,
based.
wow, topical.
It
I,
was called Concussion, that movie.
Welcome to the First Picture Show, an ongoing series where we discuss horror and thrillers from all your favorite streaming platforms and anything else we damn well please. I'm secret undercover spy Jason Monet. I'm here with critic extraordinaire Dave Joseph. Hi, Dave. How's it going this week?
It's going well, man. How are you?
Oh, just peachy. You know, it's been an interesting week. We're coming into actually I think the season of our preference in a way. I mean, given that we are talking about horror, we are coming into the cradle of horror right now. So
Yeah, we are, and for the show, it's amazing, and just for movies, I think it's amazing. But for me personally, it's rough because there's so much candy everywhere, and I've realized that I need to go on a diet. So it's been a struggle.
now candy diet, you can handle that.
Yeah, I mean, I could crush some candy.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
game,
fine.
isn't
It's a lot of the candy crushes you.
it?
All right, let's get into it. What was this movie? Tag. You know, it's hard being a kid. Growing up is not easy. It's especially difficult to grow up when you're constantly under the threat of being cut in half by a mysterious invisible wind. Tag, a gruesome, surreal horror film from Japan, is a movie that defies a lot of explanations. But here's something I can definitely tell you: it is not about the literal game of tag. So, Dave, what was this movie about?
I don't know. Uh, I mean, I've never seen a movie where I was more sure that there was an underlying theme. Um, it kind of reminded me of Mother, except Mother I picked up on it, but in this one I'm the guy. I'm that guy
Yeah.
that just sat there confused and never got better.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that bringing up Mother makes a lot of sense because it struck me during the film that it was another kind of a real surreal take on something, on an issue. And it took a little while to get into it. I think that we have to say up front, before we get into anything, just like general spoiler alert, there's absolutely no way we can talk about this film without talking about what actually happens in this film. There's no way to really summarize this film in any easy way without giving away some pretty serious, points, some pretty serious plot, and talking about the bigger issues. And, honestly, if you haven't seen Tag yet and you really want to see it and you really want to go along with it and be surprised by it, you probably shouldn't be listening to this right now. You should probably go and just watch it and then come back and watch this. We should probably just sum up a little bit more about the plot briefly so we can kind of get more
Yeah.
into the different ways it goes. But, it starts out with a character who's a Japanese schoolgirl who is stranded by a horrific accident that's, by the way, just separate from everything else heavy we're talking about, is a pretty amazing scene, just in general. I mean, it's an incredibly horrific, crazy, gory scene, and it also is just so out of the blue, and it's kind of great from that point of view. Um, so she's stranded by this horrific event while traveling to a camp, and then she sort of wanders off on her own, and eventually wanders into another school, where she's recognized by other schoolmates who she doesn't necessarily recognize. And she has this weird moment where she's sort of disconnected from what she was before, the identity she had before, and sort of becomes this newer person. And then we see her gel into that society, into that role. And then a little while later, another horrific accident happens, and she's again stranded almost alone as a sole survivor. And she transitions again into another entirely different role. And actually, at that point, they change actors, and it's an entirely different actor who's taken over the role with a different name, even though it is technically the same character. And you see, this actor sort of deal with the idea of loss of identity and also deal with the confusion of just what's actually happening to them, and so on and so forth. This happens a few times throughout the movie in different stages, and each character could possibly represent a different, archetype of a female figure, really. First thing, Dave, did you like it?
Yeah, and I liked it because there was enough craziness that went on. Especially like, later on in the film, you realize that there's a reason why things are so weird. Um, and
Yeah.
after I got that, I really started to enjoy the film a lot more.
Yeah, I think that it's a movie that really follows dream logic with this narration, with this narrative, and I think as a viewer going into it, if you don't really know what you're expecting, and I don't know if you looked at anything before this, but I certainly didn't, so I didn't really have any idea what to expect. But initially you start watching this film, and it's very jarring because it's creating this really ambiguous, confusing space. But I also, I think that it was definitely intentionally doing that, and I think that it it did manage to follow through and complete. You know, it did manage to follow through and make its point about what it was trying to do, while maintaining a real surreal quality to it, which I give it a lot of points for. So like you, I like this movie, but it's definitely you definitely have to like sit through and actually wait to see what unfolds because it's a little jarring at first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it tests your patience. It really does. It pays off, but you're a good 35, 40 minutes into it before you get any answers at all. Maybe more. Maybe
Yeah,
long.
yeah. I mean, it's sort of the kind of thing that slowly dawns on you. I mean, and it's also because the movie itself takes so many left turns. Initially you're just sort of lost in the idea that maybe the movie doesn't actually tie together in any real specific way. So you kind of have to give it some faith. You kind of have to like ride it out and see where it's going to go. I think what it had going for it in terms of compelling me to continue to watch it was that it was authentically messed up. I mean, it was a really kind of crazy movie, and it was the kind of movie that caught you off guard, but also you could sense that there was just something really off about what all the characters were doing, and they were doing it in an intentional way. It was a self-aware movie about how weird everyone was acting and how weird the environment was. So I was ready to see where it was going to go. I was waiting to see what was going to happen. And at some point, I think, probably halfway through, you start to see sort of the mechanics at work. You start to see what the trick of it is. Um, in general, Dave, how do you feel about like stream of consciousness filmmaking? How do you feel about like David Lynch, for instance, or how do you feel about Yorgos Lanthimos, who's the Greek
Oh,
director that did Dogtooth and Lobster and a couple of things of late?
yeah. Well, yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos is one of my favorites. In fact, Killing with a Sacred Deer was my favorite movie last year.
Yeah, I
Uh,
still haven't seen that, and I really need to see that.
oh yeah, yeah. Definitely see that. And The Lobster was great. I haven't seen Dogtooth. I need
Oh,
to.
I love Dogtooth. Definitely see
Yeah.
Dogtooth. I've seen it. Yeah, that was my entry into his work in general. It really is worth checking out.
I think that's his first movie, right?
I don't. It's the first movie I remember hearing about. I don't know if it's actually his first feature, but maybe it's one of the first ones that broke in the U.S. for him. I'm not sure.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I like in Lynch. I haven't seen a lot of the Lynch. I've seen Eraserhead and I've seen Mulholland Drive, and I like both of those movies a lot. So
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, those are kind of. I mean, if Lynch is Lynch, like he's kind of
yeah,
consistently messed up in a lot of ways, but those are definitely different types of movies, in general. I'm surprised you've never seen Blue Velvet. I would feel like you
no,
would.
I know.
I think you would totally love Blue Velvet.
It's a
Yeah,
blind spot. I need to do it. Yeah.
yeah. There's so many elements in Blue Velvet that I think you'd be absolutely into. But so I guess just overall, what do you think this movie is about? I have like a long list of things I wrote down as questions that are like maybe it's
I
about this, maybe it's about that. Did you have a similar thing going on, or
well, I mean, I was really reaching and trying hard, because I needed something to throw out there.
yeah? I mean,
I
I guess I would say like during the actual film itself, I came up with all these different theories. It's the end of it that kind of solidified what I ultimately would say is the big idea behind what it was about. But up until that point, I was sort of like, it could be about this, it could be about that. I'll just go through my list because I
Okay.
think it was kind of a fun thing to do as I was watching it. Was this movie about adolescent fears and about growing up and joining conformist society? Was this a movie about society imposing a loss of identity? Was it about adolescent fears about being different or left behind? Was it about the fear of being different than everyone else in general as you grow up? Was it about subverting identity in general and the ego? Was it about karma? Was it about an existential take on reincarnation? Was it about female relationships in general? Was it about an adolescent awakening to a queer identity? Was it about not fitting into a heteronormative structure? Was it about queer struggles in Japan and everywhere else in general, perhaps? Was it about the way women are treated in general in Japanese culture and everywhere else? Was it about sexism? Was it about empowering, otherwise typically hypersexualized sort of female characters in Japanese horror films? Was it about sexual violence against women? Was it about the future? It definitely, for me, all these things sort of trended in one direction by the end of it. I think it is about a lot of different things, but I would say the one thing I do think it's definitely about is the problems women face when dealing with a fairly traditional patriarchy. And I think that's not apparent necessarily until the end, although there are all these things you can see that sort of hint at it. But at the end, I think that the director, who's Sion Sono, does make a fairly heavy-handed pitch about that.
Yeah, I thought it basically what I came up with was a sort of a take on kind of male gaze and the manipulation that women face in well, I guess Japanese culture, but just culture in general. From a really early age. But I don't know. I think that might be too on the nose.
No, but I do think that. Well, I guess I would say that I think this movie had a lot of on the nose moments, and I do think that you're probably absolutely correct about that. The director himself is known for making other exploitational films in general about female sexuality and about horror and about Japanese schoolgirls specifically. So in a lot of ways, I think it's interesting that he went in this direction, and it almost, I don't know if it's like a mea culpa on his part or something else, but it seemed like he was trying to convince people that he was maybe totally self-aware about the exploitation he was making by making this film and saying, look, see, I get it. I get the idea that we're fetishizing and objectifying women in my other films, and here's this movie I'm making that might be considered sort of feminist. I mean, I think that's a question to ask ourselves, is this kind of a feminist movie?
I think it is, but I might be wrong.
I know we are the wrongest people to declare it one way or the other. Like we really cannot make any declarations like that about this movie. So I think that the way the narrative itself works, it doesn't. It's so dreamlike. I guess the logic in it is so dreamlike. It's really hard to kind of pick up on some of the more maybe feminist themes or feminist messaging that I think Sion's trying to make in this movie. But there is a point, I think, where it becomes much more apparent. And I don't know if you picked up on this, Dave, but there was a point like with the second character, when the new actor comes in to take over, where I suddenly realized, hey, there hasn't been any men in this movie whatsoever so far. Every character up to that point, every figure had been a female figure, which was really interesting. I mean, at that point, I was like, that's not by accident. That has to be playing into this in some way, and there must be something he's trying to say here. I don't know. What did you think, Dave? Was there a point where things maybe clicked a little bit more in terms of that theme?
Yeah, the one character, the first opportunity for a male character is a pig. And
yeah,
that's not subtle. I don't think.
No, that was pretty heavy-handed in the scene with I think Keiko is the middle character's name, who is the adult version of Mitsuko. She's walking down an aisle in a church to what is a coffin. When she first sees it, it's a coffin that's standing straight up, so it represents her own death, theoretically, or death in general. And then she's brought in front of it, and it opens to reveal a pig man, or at least, maybe it wasn't necessarily a man. I think it's pretty much what's suggested, but like it's a normal human body with the giant head of a grotesque pig, and it's a pretty interesting surreal moment as well.
The thing that kind of tipped me off that it was a feminist film was how ridiculous the upskirt shots kept happening. I could tell that was commentary.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because apparently, and I'm not really familiar with this director that much, but he's he's also definitely made films about that, like that idea in general. I mean, or like he's used it to the effect of actually fetishizing that. And in this movie, he seems to be using it to make a different point and to and to parody his other work in a way, which is really an interesting idea.
Yeah, because I mean, he definitely was pushing the look what accidentally happened for the 20th time in this film. Um, so I mean, that to me that was when it clicked. Like this is there's definitely a commentary about the objectification of young women.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of this had to do with commentary about schoolgirl fetishization in general. I'm not going to say that I mean, it is partly it's something in Japanese culture, but I also feel like it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
I wouldn't put the onus on Japanese culture in this movie. This really does, I think, translate to any patriarchal society. I mean, it certainly plays up here just as well. Um,
yeah, I think so.
what did you think about the transition between the different types of characters? Do you feel like there were three different, like intentionally different sort of like archetypes that he was picking? Do you feel like they were supposed to represent different stages in the character's life, for instance?
Well, maybe, but what I thought, and and again, this may be way off base. I thought that he tried to take three different characters, you know, three different people that would have not a whole lot in common, and show that they all had to deal with the same stuff. That it
That's
doesn't really
interesting.
matter,
Yeah,
um, who you are. If you are a young woman, you have to. This is something that you can't escape. Like it just happens to everyone. Um, I don't know.
yeah,
Hopefully, maybe that was right. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, to me, I was also thinking like, okay, this, when this character starts out, the character's name is Mitsuko, by the way. She
Hmm.
is just a Japanese schoolgirl, and then she transitions to an older adult character who's like on her wedding day about to walk down the aisle. And I thought, okay, this is about maybe the stages of how a woman progresses through adulthood in the culture. And then they shifted to the third character, Izumi, who was, I think, a marathon runner ultimately. And that sort of blew my theory out of the water a little bit because it doesn't seem like that's connected in the same way. But I do think each of them did have very specific roles. I'm just not sure which roles were supposed to be what. I mean, it could also be seen as maybe the three stages of Mitsuko sort of realizing and understanding what the process around her was doing. It's sort of like she starts out kind of naive as a schoolgirl, and then she transitions into this period of where she comes into her own a little bit during the fight scene that happens during the wedding, and then it transitions to her trying to escape with this marathon runner who's literally running away from violence. I just, that's something about this movie that I loved was the fact that it just kept ratcheting up the insanity.
Yeah, yeah,
It never stopped and said, okay, let's back off. We transitioned into this new phase. We transitioned to a different character. It's hard on an audience to understand what's going on. Let's give them a little bit. Let's give them like a normality or some sort of touch point for them to like grasp to bring them back into the storyline. No, fuck it. They didn't care. They're like, we're gonna throw every machine gun at this. We're gonna throw like a crazy, ninja like pigman. We're gonna throw an undead army of teenage girls. I mean, there was just all sorts of stuff. I like that. For me personally, that really works. That was a successful trick for me.
yeah. And I like, you know, it. Why not? Why not just go for it? Like, this is. I think I love the fact that we're doing this right after Drifter because it is the exact opposite. Um, and it's as much. I mean, I enjoy this a lot more.
Yeah,
So I mean, I think that whereas that is really understated and to the point where it's just lethargic and boring. This is far from that. I mean, it just keeps throwing you curves left and right.
it really
Uh,
did keep you guessing. I mean, and I would say during the probably the most normal segment, or at least the most pensive segment, which happens early on when Mitsuko goes to this new school and she meets what end up being kind of these friends that stay with her through all the different phases. There's this sort of gentle scene that happens down by a lake where they discuss the surreality of life and how you have to do different things in life to stay on your toes and shake up the world. It's a really interesting scene for a lot of reasons. I think, this is where my question of whether or not this is also a movie about, this young woman's sort of like entrance into maybe understanding her own sexuality and maybe getting into sort of like queer politics a little bit and queer identity a little bit. They hint kind of strongly about this relationship between Mitsuko and this other friend of hers, Aki, throughout the entire film, who's always there by her side, who really is kind of the saving factor for her in a lot of different situations, and who she has a really tight and strong bond with. I think that there's a suggestion or an undertone there to there being a romance, even though they never really actively address it.
Oh, I think yeah. I mean, I think they joke about it, if I remember correctly.
They joke about it, yeah.
But it definitely seems like there's something there, but it also could have been just, the idea that at the end of the day, they can only really trust each other. They can only really count on each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the director left it open to interpretation. I could see making a case either way about this. I could see it being about the strength in female relationships in general. I could also see it being about a love story in a way between the two of them and how they're fighting against, a more heteronormative situation because they are being kind of repressed by this patriarchy around them. But we don't actually find out so distinctly until the end. So we should talk a little about the end because, again, what the fuck? Where did that come from?
It's definitely it's a Wizard of Oz kind of moment, I guess.
Like a crazy sexist Wizard of Oz situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end, Mitsuko travels to what is, I guess, the future, and finds all the men. It's a future that's pretty much owned by men. And there we find out that she is basically a character who's been brought back to life through DNA and is being controlled in sort of almost like a real-life video game sort of way. I mean, and that, I think, is where the director's really, very heavy-handedly saying, hey, this is how women are controlled by society and by the patriarchy specifically, since he literally, takes a guy, trots out a very old man who is the one controlling her. But I think that there's a lot also going on in that scene. I mean, it sounds like I'm saying, here's an explanation, but it's not nearly that clear-cut. There's a lot of ambiguity about where she is when she meets this guy, what the situation is itself, what he's actually doing, and then who the characters around him are. I don't know if you had any kind of theories about the young man versus old man, if they were the same person, for instance, do they represent different people, what the situation there was?
I think they're the same person. I think he was trying to, the way he won the game, the way you win the game, I guess, is for him to get the girl, and the way and this is big time spoiler, the way she wins is to kill herself and not let that happen. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of the moment where she has to regain any sort of control over her own life, and it's suggested that it has to happen through suicide, basically.
I wonder if there's I want to scour YouTube and see if he's been interviewed, see if he's spoken about this.
I saw a couple reviews here and there, and everyone sort of talks about some of the stuff that we've been talking about lately, but I haven't seen anyone really talk about this movie, and I'm really intrigued because I think that I don't know how long it's been on Netflix at this point, but I do think that it's a movie that has a lot going on that you would not guess just based on the summation and the little summation in the title and the way that it just looks like it's going to play out. I mean, I really did think when I saw this listed, and we're watching this, it was my suggestion, and it was my suggestion because another friend of mine said, hey, you should watch this, but he didn't tell me anything about this movie. He just was like, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I just assumed, based on the title and based on the poster itself, that this was probably going to be about a game of tag that is like a battle royale, where teenage girls, or teenagers in general, kill each other by literally playing tag in some sort of battle-like situation that's televised or something. Sure. That would be the obvious guess. And I think the source material that the director used this, started with, actually was kind of about that. But I think he threw it all away and he was determined to go in his own direction.
when you told me you wanted to watch Tag, I thought you were talking about the movie that came out over the summer, and I
Ah,
think it just came out on video. I was like, wow, that's on Netflix already. I was like, all right, yeah, I like Hannibal Buress. Let's watch that.
yeah, the one with John
Uh,
Hamm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And then went on Netflix and put in Tag, and I was like, all right, that makes more sense.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, Dave.
Nah, I haven't seen the other Tag. I thought about trying to play a joke on you and just start talking about that.
See how I would have taken it. I mean, maybe it would have worked. Maybe it would have played into the whole surreal element of this movie in general. You know,
Maybe.
I don't know. It's
Okay.
just a horror movie.
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely a horror movie.
I think it definitely was. You had she was just escaping horrifying scene after horrifying scene. Um, people getting ripped in half, people getting shot to pieces. You know, people turning on each other. It was definitely creatures biting. Yeah,
Yeah,
horror
yeah,
all the way. I think so.
yeah. What did you think about the gore in this film? Do you feel like it was? Did it make sense for the rest of the film? I mean, did it make sense with the overall feeling of the film?
Yeah, it did. It made a lot of sense, and it had a video game feel to it, which is the metaphor on which the whole movie is based. So
Yeah, yeah. It really
pretty
did.
perfect.
There was definitely a point where it seemed like they were trying to follow that dynamic, and then during the reveal, it all clicked together. It all made sense. It made sense why there was these hyper violent sort of completely out of left field moments, and it made sense that there wouldn't be necessarily any explanation behind it. Just that there was the spectacle of the violence that was kind of fueling everything forward. Um, so, having said that, would we have survived?
No, no, we would have made it out of the first. Uh,
You don't think we cannot duck the wind?
no, the wind would have ripped us both in half.
I mean, the thing is, as men, we wouldn't have been chosen in the scenario to begin with. We would have been fine anyway.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us are going to be writing poetry and dropping that pen.
No,
Uh, we're done.
no. You know where we are? We're in that incredibly wonderful scene when she enters the future and basically walks through a kitchen of a bunch of men cooking food, just like chefs who aren't paying attention to her, are just chopping up all sorts of fish parts and vegetables and getting in a deep fryer. That's where we are. That's our scene. Just sort of like
Huh?
aimless guys in the background doing a job.
That's me. That's my life.
How about good elements? What did you think was the good?
Um, I mean, I think just there are a number of things. One, I think that the way that the action scenes were shot and sort of I mean, I hate to use the word because it's the word that the movie itself uses, but in a surreal way, um, and the use of the gore and how the aesthetic around that. I think also just what you said before about how it just ratchets up the crazy and just kind of gets into this crazy game of can you top this, and it always can. So yeah, I mean, I there are a lot of things that I liked about this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say that over the last week or so since I've seen it, it's really grown on me. I mean, I think that I walked out of it, or I ended it thinking like, well, that was really interesting. I had to think about this more, and now that I have thought about it more, I'm like, oh, I think I like this quite a bit. It's a very unique concept, and it was a really unconventional way of actually handling the subject material. It's funny you brought up Drifter. I mean, I would say the last two movies we've talked about, Terrifier and Drifter, both of them have been very, very conventional. Both of them have been exactly what you might expect for the type of genre that they laid out. And this movie was the actual complete opposite of that. This movie was completely out of left field. You never really knew what was going to happen. You weren't really convinced that you could ever really figure out what was happening. It was kind of ambiguous even up to the very end. Even though it came together, it still had a comprehensive narrative that held it all together by the end of it. It was definitely not something that you could ever say, I knew what was going to happen. And I really
No.
appreciated that. It's so rare to find a movie like that anymore. I mean, there's lots of things I love, but that are very conventional. But like every once in a while, it's great to kind of just be challenged and to be satisfied by the challenge.
Yeah, this movie is definitely one that you could probably watch, 10, 15 times and still keep picking up new ideas from it. And I'm not saying, look, Terrifier, I think it is well done for what it is, and I think that I understand why people love it, and I think that the neat thing about that is it kind of creates a universe, and I think we're going to see more films come out of it. But this is it's kind of a chess versus checkers situation, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that this movie has a lot of big important things to talk about, and it's doing it in a really interesting way. And it took a little while for me while watching the movie to really be convinced that it was trying to say that. If you turn it off in the first 20 minutes, you might think that this is a movie that's just purely exploitive and is kind of uncomfortably about teenage women's underpants, basically. But it's not. You have to stick through it and actually see where it's going. And if you do, it pays off. So what didn't you like about the movie?
I don't have a lot of complaints. I think that if a person wanted to complain about the ambiguity of the message, I guess they would be within their rights to do that. But I mean, the whole point of it is to make you think, I guess, and to make you work. And I think that there are people that just don't want to do that. That people they're looking for escapism, and
Yeah.
I could see like sitting down in the wrong mood.
Yes.
Because it's good. Like if you're sitting, because we both watched this movie for a podcast, and it's good. It's good podcast water.
Yeah.
But I could see like if you came home from work late and you're just tired and you want to throw on a movie and like a horror movie, and this I could see how it could maybe not press that button for you at that stage, but it's not what it's for.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I wonder how many people have looked at it on Netflix and started it and then been, I don't know, disappointed that it didn't seem to make the sense that they thought it was going to make and turn it off. I wonder if it gets a bad rap for that.
That data exists. We'll never see it, but it would be amazing.
This is true. Yeah.
To know how many people started it and never bothered.
For me, like some bad things, and maybe they're not really necessarily bad, but production-wise, some of the effects are a little cheap looking. There's definitely a variety between practical and computer-generated effects. The computer-generated stuff, some of it didn't quite work. It took me out of the movie a little bit, but that's okay. I'm not here for the production values necessarily, so that's not a big deal. And the other thing I would say is that the third act itself, which involves the runner, Izumi, is a little weaker than the other ones. And I think that it's not necessarily that apparent until the very end, when there's this whole suicide that happens between all the different characters, where that character just sort of mysteriously is dead. And they don't really explain how or why, Izumi came to kill herself. She just sort of appears as part of the trio of characters that have to kill themselves to sort of escape the game. But those are minor things. It's like those are not going to change how the movie overall works for me, and they're not going to change the fact that I think that it was still pretty successful about what it was trying to do. Okay, so officially the verdict?
I'd recommend it. I really would.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not for everyone. You have to really be comfortable with seeing excessively gory scenes, and you have to be comfortable with sort of, sitting through ambiguous plot lines and ambiguous sort of action. But if you can, great. You should definitely watch this. If you like that kind of thing, if you like, dream logic in your film, definitely watch this.
I think if you're okay with the gore in Kill Bill and okay with the narrative of Mother, then you may like this.
Yeah, that's fine. I would say that.
Just to put it in a framework that someone, because I know people that would hear that and be like, "Yep, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out."
Well, yeah, I think Mother's a the bigger test on that. I mean, I think, plenty of people are okay with gore. I don't think a lot of people are okay with Mother, right? Yeah, that was a challenging movie for a lot of people.
I think so, and but I mean, it's just the craziness getting dialed up slowly but surely throughout the whole film.
Yep.
They both do that.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you liked it. I honestly wasn't sure what you would think.
Man, you're 2-0 and I'm 0-1. So
I think that this is. I would say this is the first one that we both actually like. I feel like.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I guess you're kind of out on Terrifier.
Yeah, I was out on Terrifier. I mean, it was okay, but I think this is the first film that we both recommend. You recommended Terrifier, though, right?
Yeah, but it was caveated. Like it's definitely not something that you want to, just you gotta be like, well, just
Yeah. Get ready for it.
what kind of? Do you like this? Do you like that? All right, yeah, no, but maybe not. Maybe
Well,
not.
yeah. So okay, so what else?
What else have I seen?
Yeah, what else have you seen, or what else is going on?
I saw First Man.
Oh,
And
what'd you think?
I saw it in IMAX. I went up to Lincoln Square and did it.
Yeah.
Highly recommend doing that. Highly recommend it. I mean, Ryan Gosling is he does that character, that the sort of understated, brooding, you can. There's a million emotions going on in just an expression.
Mm-hmm.
He does it very well. I thought he was great. I don't know how the Oscar nominations are going to break down, but I was impressed with him in this film, and I also I think it's difficult to create. Well, I mean, I know that they get to the moon.
They do. Well, first off, we all know that was not real. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. But I was definitely not aware of all the things that transpired, leading up to that, and in all the other missions, and how things, went horribly wrong, more than once. So it was. Anyway, I enjoyed the film, and I think Damien Chazelle. I mean, we talked about Yorgos Lanthimos, and we talked about we're talking about Damien Chazelle right now, and I think later on we'll talk about Jeremy Saulnier. I mean, I'm excited about some of these directors that are coming up and giving us just one after another. I feel like the future is bright, and it's really one of the only things in this world I can say that about.
More upbeat news. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that First Man, I feel like is probably coming on the backs of other films that have done well, that have been about space on a really grand scale. So it feels like it fits within the way that we're talking about the future and space in general. And I think that's been a good thing. I think that I certainly enjoyed Gravity, for instance. I certainly enjoyed Interstellar. I know they're very different movies, but still, I do feel like there is, something to be said about the ones that have come first to get people into this mode of thinking about space travel and about our future and about technology, etc.
Yeah, if you go back a little further, like The Right Stuff.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's kind of those. All those movies are. To me, I enjoyed all of them, and this kind of just fits right into that. I mean, and that's praise coming from me. I highly recommend this. I haven't seen as many movies this year as I usually do. I'm going to try and catch up, but
you can't catch up to your old standards.
I know
that was amazing what you used to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, you kept entire theaters in business for the most part. Like, you single-handedly probably saved AMC.
I want to get back into that. I want to get back out there and do it again. I just keep thinking I'm definitely going to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know. See the new Halloween, or see um, what's that? Royale Hotel Royale or what?
Oh yeah, yeah. Something with a long title that is sort of a question mark about the hotel. Something, something. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
I want to
so
see that
excited.
too. Actually, it sounds great. Yeah.
um,
No, I want to see that as well, and I want to see a bunch of things. So, but I never do. You're the opposite for me. You actually go
what
out
did,
there and get things done, and I just kind of like haul up and eventually rent them.
did you? Well, I mean, that's fine too, Dave. Have you seen anything lately?
Well, if you recall, last time we talked, I talked about going to the Brooklyn Horror Fest, or at least
Oh
wanting to
yeah,
go to
yeah,
the Brooklyn
yeah.
Horror Fest. Yeah, and I actually did get a chance to go see one of the premieres at the Horror Fest, and that I really enjoyed. And it's a movie that probably will never get to see theaters here in general domestically because it's actually an Indian movie. It's actually a Hindi language movie in general, but it's not Bollywood esque in any way. It is a horror film without any like musical numbers or any kind of sort of traditional Bollywood features to it. And it's also really good. It's a movie called Tumbbad, and it basically follows sort of like a fairy tale like legend through the late 1800s into the early 1900s as a character deals with the way it affects his life. And it's beautifully shot. The cinematography in it and the location shoot settings and the way that they managed to put everything together was absolutely fantastic, and that really helped kind of make it feel even more distinct because it felt like a period piece in a lot of ways. It felt like it could have been a Merchant Ivory production, and it also is legitimately kind of scary. I mean, it's not necessarily a big scare kind of movie. There's not necessarily a lot of like there's certainly not a modern horror movie in any sense. But there are some very authentically creepy things that happen. There are some really tense scenes. So they really kind of ratchet up some of the tension and something that you don't really know is going to happen. And there is kind of a sort of a very creepy premise to the entire thing, and it pays off. So I definitely recommend it. I definitely recommend seeking it out. I don't know where you would find it at this point. I hope it'll be streaming somewhere. And I hope that more people get a chance to see it because I think it's actually a really good film in general. So.
Yeah, that sounds like something that definitely Netflix would be interested in.
I would hope so, but it's foreign language, and it's
Was
certainly
it?
not what you would expect, coming from that part of cinema. So I think that there'd have to be some education, I guess, in a way to get it into Western audiences' hands.
They have a don't they have an Indian horror show or a show? Cool.
Ghoul, that's right. I've heard about Ghoul, and Ghoul is a series, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, I feel like I definitely. I mean, they're making a big push into India, aren't they? They need to do a lot of, and I think they are. I mean, there's a French one too, right? Is it The Rain? Is that what it's called? Oh, you know what? This is The Rain is actually it's not French. It's Scandinavian.
Dave, you racist.
Whatever. It's not English. Um, it's Danish. But you can get it in French, German,
Oh, okay.
or the people speak probably French. It's Danish for the most part, though. I think.
Okay.
And the subtitles you can get Danish, English, simplified Chinese. I'm not sure what that means. Spanish and traditional Chinese.
Which one did you watch? Simplified or traditional?
I have not watched any of it yet,
Oh.
but I
It's
would
only a matter
like
of
to
time.
ultimately. Now they keep canceling my Marvel shows, so I'm gonna eventually have to watch other stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
sorry about Luke Cage.
yeah, I have not seen season 2. I liked season 1. I let's see what did I just finish? I just finished Jessica Jones. I'm still in the middle of what's that Maniac.
Ah, Maniac.
And then I'll probably do I guess Luke Cage season 2, and then that'll be it for that. And then I'll do Iron Fist season 2, and that'll be it for that.
Ah,
And
interesting.
Daredevil season 3, and I think they're still going to keep going with Punisher, right? So
Are they? Yeah. I haven't heard anything about Punisher one way or the other.
Punisher, dude, Punisher's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Punisher's a hard series to do. Like, none of the films really did it well. I don't know if there's been any other TV shows, but...
I'll be honest with you, I think I liked all the Punisher movies.
Okay, I take it back. If you like Punisher, all the films are great.
But the show is...
Yeah.
I don't... Maybe you'd like Warzone, but I don't think you'd like really any of the Punisher movies. But the show, I think you'd like.
I mean, to be fair, I think the only Punisher movie I've seen was the one from the 90s.
Yeah, the Dolph Lundgren one?
Yeah, which that was not good, right? I mean, it was good, but it was not good.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good,
Yeah. Same page.
Yeah, Jessica Jones is definitely coming back, though, right? Everything like that is coming back.
I don't know. I
think Jessica Jones got renewed. I could be wrong.
I saw season 2. I thought was very interesting. It's a slow burn. Season 1 is just like tension.
Yeah.
And season 2 is not like that at all. But
second season's always the hardest. Just like the second book, the second novel from somebody. It's always a letdown. Something else I'm watching on Netflix a little bit is a DIY crafting show that's also got kind of a morbid, macabre sense to it called The Curious Creations of Christine McConnell. I don't suppose that's something you've come across, Dave.
I have not heard of that. This is so interesting. What is
it's set up to be kind of like a Martha Stewart show. It's set up to be hosted by this sort of perfect hostess who is also joined by a couple of I think Henson Creation puppets that are her co-stars that are like hulking sort of evil beasts or like a sort of a rabid raccoon or this terrible cat. So she's sort of surrounded by these these wisecracking, scary creatures, and she's also making sort of scary things. Like she'll make like cupcakes with bones, or she'll make like she'll do DIY crafts that are definitely for like a goth edge. Like they're like if Hot Topic and everyday living combined forces. That's kind of what this would be like. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's trying to find its footing. It's still not quite there yet. I think that it's hard to work with the puppets in this way, where they're definitely fun creatures, but they're not. It's not PG. It's PG-13 to R what they're doing. So it's kind of like
okay,
yeah. But the most interesting thing about it to me is that I think the hostess Christine McConnell is literally parodying Martha Stewart. Like her delivery is very deadpan, to the point of being almost wooden. And she has this amazing thing that she does with her eyes where she doesn't seem to focus anywhere or look directly at anything. So I think that she is trying to actually, parody the idea of Martha Stewart in general, which is kind of a great idea when you combine it with the rest of what the show is. Like it's from that point of view, I actually find it really fascinating because I think it's really smart. I could be wrong, and she could just be really wooden in general and maybe not the best, presenter in the world, but I don't know. Having said that, Dita Von Teese is also in it as like her I guess, ghost aunt. I know. Like, there's a lot of things going on in the show that are pretty interesting and also, like, surprising that they would necessarily include them. And it's fairly amusing. So, I think it's worth checking out if you like doing crafting, certainly. Which I know, Dave, that's at least 50% of your life is crafting.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a freaking nightmare. But
yeah, that's the point.
I do want to watch the show,
Yeah. Yeah, skip around a little bit. Give it a shot. You don't really have to sit through entire episodes if you don't want to. It's definitely a piecemeal thing, and I do think it's still a little rough around the edges. If it gets picked up again, maybe it'll be more streamlined. But it's interesting, especially right now. It's definitely interesting. So
I mean, that's what I love about Netflix. Netflix is niche, and
yeah,
there isn't a lot. I mean, like they really, they're finding like if there's a any kind of an audience for a particular type of thing, they cater to it. It's definitely, I think, the antithesis of what happened to cable, where everything became the same. All the channels became the same channel. And Netflix is really kind of filling that gap, and that's why cable's dying and Netflix is growing.
Well, it's lucky for us. There's lots of things for us to check out. There's too much. There's too much stuff for us to check out and to evaluate. All right, Dave, should we wrap this up?
Yeah.
We don't really actually ever have a thing to say at the end, do we?
No.
We don't have a... Why don't you plug stuff? You're good at doing that.
Yeah, guys, if you happen to watch this, if anyone other than the two of us watches this, subscribe to the channel. Maybe tell a friend about it. You know, we're not actually trying to hide information on YouTube. It just happens to be working out that way.
Yeah, we're very exclusive, but we're open to new membership. So feel free to drop by. Drop by the secret by default club that we've created. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter. We are at First Pick Show. That's first and then PIC Show on Twitter. And like us on Facebook. I think we're also at First Pick Show on Facebook as well. And you will get all the latest news and opinions that you probably didn't even know you wanted right there. Ready to go.
Do it.
Big touch football player. I mean, I can see it in hindsight. Like I get it, but
I mean, I remember there were when I was in elementary school. That was the day. I mean, that was the only thing that mattered. I didn't care about school. But yeah, that was the most important thing.
You were just showing up to school because you were hoping to be drafted. Is that it?
Yeah, it was how I was gonna segue into the league.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many touch football players that have gone on to become really famous and millionaires, like professional sports athletes.
I figured the Eagles would have a scout watching us.
They really should. Why aren't they starting to scout touch football games at grade schools? I don't know.
You got to get an edge somehow, right?